And we are back here on Open. The New York State budget for fiscal year 2020 was agreed upon this weekend by Governor Cuomo, Speaker Hasty, and Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins. Now, what is included? How does it affect you? We talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the show, but joining us now via phone, discussing more, is editorial page editor of the New York Post, Michael Benjamin. And Mike, good to have you.
Good morning, Daren. Glad to be on.
Oh, glad to have you back, buddy. And listen, as we talk about the budget, obviously it's agreed upon in principle. Now the hard part, getting it passed all the way through. And when we talk about this here, we talk about MTA, we talk about, cuts that are possibly being made. What do you look at,
Darren,
and what do you see?
It's all been done. Now, remember, the budget is due on April 1st. It was all done the morning of April 1st. I believe the Senate passed the budget by 3 o'clock on the 1st, and the Assembly finished finalizing passage at 7 a.m. on Monday, April 1st.
Yeah, I misspoke on that one, but take me through this, though. As far as what we look as numbers are concerned, we talk about cuts and we talk about additions to the MTA. When we break down numbers, what are we seeing here?
You're not seeing cuts, actually. I mean, you're seeing a budget that increased about 2%. The state budget is now $175 billion. Only the state of California has a bigger state budget than New York does. Education aid went up almost 4%, where now the state is going to be spending $28 billion on state aid to education. There are a couple of interesting property taxes. They made the suburban property tax cap at 2% permanent, and now there'll be a 1 to 3% mansion tax on properties, homes selling for more than $1 million.
And we talk a little bit about the MTA. Obviously, more money coming towards the MTA. Good move here.
It's a good move, but a lot of it involves the state taking over New York City streets for congestion prices, and the city not really getting a share of that money. The money's going to go directly from the state to the MTA, and reducing the state's share of what it pays to the MTA for revenue in funding. New York City is going to have to increase its contributions to the MTA's capital plans to get things done, and something that's unfair to the city. And those who live within the congestion pricing zone, which is below 61st Street, from what we understand, but there's no real plan. The congestion pricing plan authorized a commission that would look at a plan and then come up with, all the specifics, and then it will go into effect January of 2021, which is months after legislators have been reelected in 2020. So they inflated themselves many sort of backlash from congestion pricing fees that could be close to at least $19 to travel into Manhattan below 61st Street.
Mm-hmm. We've got the ban, I should say, on plastic bags. A lot to talk about with marijuana. I'll talk about that in a second. I want to get to, first of all, what stuck out to you by way of numbers? I mean, is there anything that really said, hey, in this budget, this is pretty impressive?
What stuck out, I guess, would be the overall cost of the budget, $175 billion. It keeps growing. There's very little effort to try to control growth and spending of the budget in New York. Education advocates continue to complain about education funding from the state being low, but almost $28 billion in new spending for state education is not pennies. It's really good money. We're not seeing the effects of that spending, and we're hoping that maybe in this next budget, as schools begin to roll it out and do things for students, that they'll better spend the money, particularly on those students who are not doing well, and in those school districts and those school communities that aren't doing well, so look to improve education and using those education dollars wisely.
When we look, this is first Democratic governor, state assembly, Senate going through in Albany. You got Republicans on the other side who are still saying there's some things that need to be done. Let's talk about the Republican side of the aisle for a minute. What do you see them edging for going forward?
Well, of course, they're the Republican side as opposed to the increases in taxes. Whether there is this property tax cap, there are other taxes that went up, taxes on some small businesses, taxes on, I'm trying to get those again. This mansion tax and other taxes that go to funding more state spending than try to keep our spending in control. Republicans are always talking about trying to get small government, but when they're in charge, the government continues to grow as well. So they're not true to their principles. But I don't want to leave out that the budget also includes ending cash bail for most offenses except for violent felonies. But I think that's a good thing for New Yorkers, particularly those who don't wind up having to spend months, if not a year or two, at Rikers waiting for a trial. They've also looked to speed up trials too, so that people don't spend. Those who are accused of a crime, they get to have their case adjudicated. Otherwise, the charges will have to be dropped. It could be problematic for places like the Bronx, where we've had this backlog of cases. They're going to need to get the judges to do their jobs, buckle down, and do many more cases than they're doing currently.
Yeah, $175 billion, a whole lot to break down. And, of course, Mike, we'll have to bring you back so we can take a little bit more.
Please do.
Oh, yes, we do. We will. And so Mike Benjamin, our guest here on Open, breaking down a little bit of the New York State budget. Of course, we'll get him back. There's more to talk about. And we do have more to talk about here on Open. Taking a quick break. Stay with us. We're coming right back in a few.